Alrighty, here we go. Commentary on episode 3. Just a random episode, really. Um, One I've been reviewing a bit, and I'd forgotten how much I like this episode, so here I'm going to do a commentary on it. Mostly because I have a cold, and I've got a bunch of ideas for songs that I want to do, but of course I can't sing them. So this opening, of course, is like a really, really obvious attempt at a Final Fantasy ripoff. It's the music that's playing, and Alex's first line there is the first line that Balthier says in Final Fantasy XII. So with the gun and the and originally, sort of my concept for Alex had been that he was just going to be badass to the nth degree in pretty much however I wanted to do, and I had a blank slate, and it wasn't until I guess episode 4 or 5 that it had been that he starts really having obvious doubts about whether he wants to be in the show or not. And eventually it all culminates to him... Well, anyway, if you've seen up to episode 12, you know. This is the last episode where I really do anything with the chivalry thing, and that's what all Lavi's thing here. I also had this grand idea of having chivalry being the defining, I don't know, whatever, because, I mean, if you watch the original, Klaus's motivation is really, really poorly defined, and especially it all culminates in this episode. I mean, it makes very, very little sense that he would accept the life-threatening mission to save Alvis in the first place. But having accomplished that mission, to then, you know, at this point in his life, he can just pack it in, go home, pick up the pieces of his life with the money he's just been given for completion of the project, or of the mission that he's just done, and call it that. But no, through the powers of narrative imperative, he has to keep himself in the plot somehow, otherwise he couldn't be like the focal character of the show. That's really the best reason that I think anyone can come up with for why he does it. So I wanted to actually give him a motivation for that, and also have him observational enough to notice that there's actually a really easy way. Of course, they do this whole thing, that comment he makes about flying in through the hole in the fourth wall, is because that's not what they do. They, in fact, fly in under the Sylvanas cannon fire. This, again, another Final Fantasy reference. This one's packed full of them. If you don't know who Quistis is from Final Fantasy VIII, hell, look, Quistis. Put that into YouTube search, you'll see what I'm getting at with that. Hopefully. Otherwise I'm just imagining things for my own sick, perverted gains. This is just a joke I've always wanted to make concerning an elevator. Of them hearing horrible music, making a thing, and I wish I could remember which MST3K episode this is from, but it's the one that is their all-time worst, most hated movie. And there's this irritating thing in the soundtrack. It's like, bleep, 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 bleep. And it's actually more applicable in MST3K, but... And this is, of course, also coming up on Tatiana's gets cut off a lot. I really hate Tatiana. If it's not obvious by what I do to her, I really hate her character. There's very few characters in this show that I absolutely hate. Most of them I love. Tatiana's, I hate her with a fiery passion. Because there's so much she could have been, and they just fail to achieve it on so many levels. She's, she's a fictional character, how's it her point, or how's it her problem, but anyway. So, that's what this... So I'm like, I'll give her a little bit of cred, make her Kara Thrace, but, Kara Thrace is awesome, and she just isn't. I can't make Tatiana awesome, so I just made her super lame. This is pretty much where that all comes from. That, of course, Godwyn is... Well, I don't need to explain that one, it was pretty damn obvious. And... Yes, of course, the whole reason they're having this conversation is because the whole idea that they get into their heads, that they fool themselves into thinking why they go on the Sylvana, is that they're going to give Alvis the goat. Ooh, That makes sense. This is, of course, a shameless Simpsons ripoff, that Bones and Organs line, which is why she calls him on it almost immediately, because that's who Lappy is. He won't let him get away with anything. This is just Alex doing his usual low-talking voice self. And I forget what I was going to have Klaus actually finish saying there. That was actually going to go somewhere, and I just plain forgot to follow through with that, because I think the concept on what I was going to do with him in the meeting with Alex in the next episode ended up changing significantly, because I had a brilliant one-liner that I just couldn't not do. And this is Dio tells the truth about me not knowing what to do with him. Here we get first instance of Emperor and Prime Minister, and the Emperor being, well, not the first instance of those two, but the first instance of the Emperor being truly batshit insane. I'm so disappointed they don't survive to the end, because there's really no limit to the amount of stuff I could make these two do, but I suppose it would eventually get old. And again, Tatiana mentioning the chivalry thing. I'll have to bring chivalry back later. I'll have a big, massive chivalry thing. The music here, this is the theme song to The Great Escape, just in case. I think that actually didn't get stuck into the sidebar, this one. Indeed it didn't. Haha, yes. So that's what it is. It's the theme to The Great Escape. Excellent movie, and I just thought about this. There.
It's incredible.
I think this next bit is the most meta thing I've ever done. This is obviously the Queen of the Elves speech to Frodo when he looks into the glass mirror, or the water mirror, whatever that thing is that shows him the future, or the present in the seeing thing. Followed almost immediately by a reference to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is the 5th generation movie remake. There are 4 versions of that movie, I think. And also, Godwin is making a mention to a Cowboy Bebop episode. So, that's what all the different references are in there. You blink, and you'll miss them. That's the way I like to do things. And here we go. The reason why this was the scene that made me turn her into Keestis, because again, if you know who Keestis is, you know exactly why they're horrified of her, and if you don't, she's a whip-toting instructor, as I mentioned very briefly through Tatiana. That business end line is basically a rip-off of Terry Pratchett again. He likes using that a lot in his jokes, and the way he phrases them in literature. And, well, this is just a plain rip-off of a public service announcement, obviously. Music playing is still the old one, but the one that it will be is Bach's Air in G. I don't know why that's relevant. It's Did I mention I have a cold? Yes, I believe I might have done that. Now, what are all the little references in the text here? That one is, of course, The Life of Brian, which I use again later. That's just exactly what he says. Geraldo McSideburns, yes. And I don't know what it would be called if they rode goats. Coming up here, the blood it's in you to give, for anyone who's not Canadian. Anyone Canadian will understand it immediately. But anyone else, that's the motto for the Canadian Blood Donation Society. Canadian Blood Services of Canada. That's their motto, or it was for a bit. And I don't have to explain NAMBLA. If you don't get NAMBLA, Google NAMBLA.